On 11 November 2016, the CCMA completed 20 years in service. 20 years changing workplaces, changing lives. Established in 1996 according to the Labour Relations Act 66 of 1995, the CCMA has become a household name in South Africa. The social partners, Labour, business and the state applaud the CCMA's contribution in dispute prevention and resolution in the South African labour market, to the extent that some refer to the CCMA as a rock in the labour market.
In 1994, South Africa experienced a historic moment, which was the celebration of the birth of democracy. With that, it created a new supreme constitution. And in terms of that constitution, it gave birth to a very important legislation called the Labour Relations Act. That Labour Relations Act 20 years ago provided in it that there should be a creation of an institution called the CCMA. Together with that, as we mature as an organization, we are not only celebrating 20 years of the CCMA, we're also celebrating 20 years of democracy. When we opened our doors as the CCMA, we started with 64,000 cases at the time. Over a period of 20 years, we have grown from 64,000 cases into 179,000 cases. This is a reflection of the growth of democracy. It is a reflection of the growth of the CCMA and also the confidence that parties have in the CCMA as a dispute resolution institution. This caseload therefore suggests that we have done well and we have grown as an organization.
Organized labor and labor in particular, generally in the country, salute the CCMA on its 20th anniversary. It has been great achievement. We believe that the CCMA is a very important institution in terms of dispute resolution. When it was founded 20 years ago, I'm sure the stakeholders did not have very clear ideas as to what it would look like. It has taken shape over a period of time. It has gone through a lot of evolution. And now we see that everybody is convinced that its role in society is no longer in doubt. So I think that's where we are. Looking back from where we are, we believe that the early challenge of setting it up, setting the administrative structures, ensuring that there are qualified and commissioners, making sure that the systems works, and now it is up and running, and it is achieving more and more. So we believe that it's a very important institutions, and we have also seen a lot of Southern African countries, some of the international stakeholders coming to learn from the CCMA. So we see it as a great national achievement. We see CCMA as a national asset, very important for our country, very important for progress in the labor market.
I've seen great strides. I've seen when the CCMA was started back in 1996, the labor market, particularly the dispute resolution setup we had, was quite complex. It was then quite common for one dispute to go through the system and be tied up for years. And that resulted in a lot of uncertainty and instability in the labor market. Now, when the CCMA was established, we, of course, given like an institution that we're dealing problems, but we have seen, especially from business side, steady improvement. We've seen the CCMA dealing with all the backlogs. We've seen dispute management or dispute resolution times coming down significantly. And every year, the CCMA sees increased volumes in referrals, and every year the CCMA manages to adhere to the prescribed times, and for us that's something good, something to be applauded.
I think if we look at the past, and we've got to start at 96 when we look at where the CCMA is today. When we originally started, it was a diverse group of people that all came together. And I think the one thing that bonded everybody together was the focus, and that focus being making a change, bringing change to our people. And we've got to remember that we at that stage had just come out of a scenario where there was massive political change. And to a certain degree, there was a euphoria about the political change, but also a lot of uncertainty about what the future may hold. And the CCMA for me was a main role player, or one of the main role players in making a change, bringing our people together. And it started with the staff of the CCMA having to come from different diverse backgrounds, having to say, but we all are here for one goal, and that is to serve our people, and that is to make a difference in the labour market. So if I had to look at where we were in the past and what we tried to achieve, I personally believe we've made a success of it. We've made a massive change in the labour market, bringing parties together, trying to resolve impasses in the labour market.
The CCMA has made a difference in the South African community. It's played the role of providing a service to anybody that has a dispute or wants to grieve about anything, and that's what the LRA actually does. It lets anybody create a dispute. If they feel that they've been aggrieved, they can come to the CCMA and refer the dispute to us. And if you look at the last 20 years, just the phenomenal growth of cases coming into the CCMA, and the fact that we have to open offices, more offices. I mean, we started off with like 10 offices. Now we've got over 21 offices throughout the country, and more to come. That alone will tell you what the service is required.
Anybody would agree that the CCMA has performed exceptionally well, beyond expectations. If one looks at the estimations which were made in terms of the caseload, at the time the projections were made when CCMA was established, they quadrupled rather than even doubled. And having regard to the resources made available to the CCMA, it's performed very well.
The CCMA, in the context of that many public organizations have been struggling in South Africa, the last 20 years. And I think CCMA really is a very good example of an organization that's been run very efficiently internally. And I think the CCMA is an example of other public organizations, how one should run an organization effectively internally. And in the context of what the CCMA has done, if you think about when it was set up in the post-1994 period, it really has, I think, changed the South African labour market. If the CCMA wasn't there, and if the CCMA wasn't effective, I think we would have seen much more labour market disputes, much more explosive and much more violent labour market disputes. For me, the very important thing is because the CCMA has been functioning so effectively and efficiently as an organization itself, and also in the marketplace also, it has given it, in the public eye, are looking at the CCMA as a very credible organization, as a very trusted organization. So for me, the CCMA has become one of the public institutions in the country that is trusted, by the broader communities, by all of the stakeholders, and by the general public.
The CCMA is well known for its dispute resolution function. Over 2.5 million cases have been received in its 20 years in service, with an average annual referral rate of 178,000 cases, far exceeding the 64,000 projected at inception. However, the CCMA focus going forward entails, amongst other things, encouraging the parties to make use of its capacity building, dispute prevention and management services to avert the high case referral rate.
The labour market situation is dynamic. It has been changing from time to time. Therefore, CCMA needs to adjust, need to change, need to prepare to face the new challenges. As you may be aware that currently there are national negotiations on the introduction of the national minimum wage. CCMA is also playing a part there. Those are the new developments in the labour market. There are discussions on the amendment of some Labour Relations Act to cover some of the issues arose out of the experiences in the labour market. Now, we believe that the CCMA should be able to place itself in a strategic position to be able to deal with the new challenges going forward.
The CCMA as an institution is very important in the labour market. More and more we see new laws giving more responsibilities to the CCMA. When it first started, the CCMA had a specific mandate and it was understood by everyone, but things change, and as they should. And the CCMA, because it is well positioned in the labour market, it's in a good position to absorb more and more of that work. So, for example, now there's a discussion going on in the country about establishing a national minimum wage, and there are suggestions that the CCMA should be playing a pivotal role in institutionalizing that sort of policy intervention, and rightly I think it should. The CCMA is trusted by all the role players in the labour market in the country, and I believe that is one area would be something the CCMA could focus on. Also, the CCMA has got the expertise, the experience to assist parties in embedding collective bargaining processes. So they could, for example, build capacity by training negotiators before they go into wage negotiations. The CCMA is also in a position to assist parties when they have had industrial action. For example, CCMA can assist with doing balloting or assisting parties in doing balloting and in facilitating dispute settlements and something like that at a collective level. So more and more, as I'm saying, the CCMA can play a role as that stabilizing force in the labour market, which of course is good for South Africa as an investment destination.
I think what we've sort of done well over the last 20 years is basically conciliating and arbitrating disputes. If we talk worldwide, we are renowned for how we conciliate, how we arbitrate, and the speed in which we do it and the volumes that we are able to deal with. Our focus, however, I think for the next 20 years should be on expanding our footprint. Go to those areas we haven't reached yet. The forefathers of the world, if I have to use the Northern Cape, to say, but do we get to the people that maybe don't have our services yet or are aware of our services? So that's one part that I think we definitely need to deal with. The second part would be on how do we change things? Because currently, as I've mentioned, we are renowned for the conciliations and arbitrations. But the concern is we're currently sitting at 179,000 cases a year. Can we continue? And the answer to that must be no. We've got to do things a little bit differently. And there, for me, we will have to go into the workplaces. We need to try and catch those disputes at an earlier stage to see how we can actually prevent those disputes coming into the CCMA. The one other area that I think we are starting to focus on now is what we call our pre-conciliations. In the Act, if we look, they would talk about the expeditious dispute resolution as the con-art process. However, I'm of the view that the pre-con is actually the first and primary area where we should resolve matters. And that is also what the international trends are telling us.
The focus should be trying to empower people to resolve disputes in the workplace. If people are educated, are empowered in that way to understand what their fundamental rights are, number one. And number two, that not everything is about a dispute. People must have the ability to sit down and actually engage and talk to each other to resolve matters. I've always believed that, but it's not only about the workplace, it's about society in South Africa and in many other places in the world as well, where it's very adversarial. And I think the CCMA can play a better role in trying to create a more mediatory, conciliatory environment rather than going the legal route, so that people can, road rage, for example, could be impacted on this, because people will be behaving in a different way.
I think in terms of resolving disputes, particularly at the level of conciliation and arbitration, and again here talking as a labor court judge, seeing how many reviews comes into the labor court, which is in fact a fraction of what gets arbitrated at the CCMA, but still a major load to the labor court. I think what the CCMA may need to do is to focus on capacitating the parties to resolve the dispute amongst themselves, emphasizing on training parties on negotiation skills and managing conflict.
The CCMA, if you look back 20 years, the CCMA must, continue on the excellence, build on the good work it has done the last 20 years. Going forward, it must maintain the consistency in its internal efficiency. And then secondly, also in the labor market, that it may have to play a much more proactive role, and to see how the CCMA can actually get involved in proactively preventing job losses. So that would be a challenging potential area where the CCMA should be going into. But I think, for me, two things that the CCMA must focus on: continue on the good work, the internal organization, the internal efficiency, and then secondly, focus on or make job losses, proactive prevention of job losses a priority going into the future.
No doubt, the CCMA has immensely transformed the South African labour market landscape. However, the journey has not been without challenges due to labour market volatility. Nevertheless, through dedication and perseverance, the CCMA managed to overcome and deliver on its mandate with excellence.
Each situation in the labour market, after the intervention of the CCMA, for an example, after the platinum strike, loan strike, what the CCMA should do in those situations going into the future is to train the parties to prevent similar occurrences, so that the parties can best be placed to avoid and to prevent a situation to reoccur.
The country is experiencing high levels of unemployment. That's well-known fact. In fact, the latest statistics show that we have climbed in our unemployment rate to 27%, which is very concerning. Now, with an unemployment rate that staggering, one can expect levels of discontent, especially in the workplace and in the society, to rise. That would mean disputes may translate, obviously, or that discontent may translate into disputes, which will then end up at the CCMA. So, given something like that, we can anticipate that the CCMA is going to get busier and busier. Now, at the same time, we have an economy that's not growing. With an economy that's not growing, it means the budget that the CCMA has to deliver on its work is also under strain. So you have, if you like, two phenomena that are not good for each other. On the one hand, you have rising unemployment, which may then lead to more disputes, and you have an economy that's not growing, which means the budget for doing the work is shrinking, and yet we expect the CCMA to do what it does best. And at the same time, because of the goings on in the country, the CCMA's mandate is being expanded in some cases, so more is expected of the CCMA. So the issue of the national minimum wage in the country may see the CCMA having more work that it previously did not have, and so it will be a capacity issue for the CCMA. That will be one of the challenges.
We should look a bit broader than just South Africa. I think if we just look at recent events, we've had Brexit, we had the American elections, we're looking at elections coming up in Europe, which may all have an impact on what happens in South Africa's labour market. So those things we cannot control. What the CCMA, however, can control is how those events impact on the labour market. Therefore, there could be potential that we're looking at more job losses. If we follow what the Americans are saying, which is bring sort of companies home, which would mean taking it away from other countries to America, that potentially may lead to job losses in South Africa. And the CCMA's role would be to intervene in those scenarios, be it to find ways to assist the parties in keeping those businesses here in South Africa. And of course, if we can't keep the businesses here and can't keep everybody employed, trying to find ways in which those people could find alternatives in the market. So that for me is one key area that we need to look at. I also think that with our conflict resolution model, you've raised Marikana, what we need to do is get to the workers, because we find that in a lot of these cases, it's no longer the traditional trade unions who is sort of at the forefront. We're finding worker forums, we're finding individual worker groups, and we need to find a way as the CCMA to reach out to all those employees, teach them conflict resolution skills, teach them basically what their rights would be, what they can do, what they can't do, and what is the best way to deal with certain scenarios. So those would just be two areas I can think of.
In most emerging markets, you would find that socioeconomic issues, in South Africa especially, service delivery issues, start manifesting themselves as labor issues, simply because they do not have enough money to actually support their families, their households, and it becomes a labor issue. So even frustration on social, societal issues. A very good example is when you see strikes happening. Not all of them are really labor-related strikes. It goes back to socio-economic issues. And that's where I think the CCMA is just one party in this whole process. They have to partner with other institutions, other structures to actually transform the society.
The CCMA has transformed the labour market and has made significant contribution in the development in the labour market. Going forward, in terms of what the CCMA should do is, as I said, focus on empowering the parties in terms of skills, particularly those of internally managing the dispute between the parties themselves.
As South Africa broadly and globally, we're likely to see a period of lower economic growth. Now, it will translate in the South African context potentially of a period of potentially more job losses and potentially more factory and mine closures. So, it just will mean from a CCMA point of view, the CCMA will have to play a proactive role in, partnering, I think, in engaging with industry, engaging with employees and trade unions to try to build collective ways of stopping job losses.
The CCMA, prior to its new strategy called Senzimehluko, meaning making a difference, we had a strategy called Siyaphambili, which effectively represented our movement forward. Now that we took over from that strategy to the new one, we are happy that the strategy that is now currently in place called Senzimehluko is the driving force behind our thrust on where we want to be in terms of our missions and our visions. Our strategy says Senzimehluko, meaning making a difference. The achievement of the strategy therefore depends on a number of things. Amongst those, it is the commissioners who do the actual work. It is expected that as we achieve this strategy, our commissioners in their daily functions in the facilitations, mediations, conciliations and arbitrations will assist the CCMA in achieving the Senzimehluko strategy. The CCMA strategy, it's an impact-driven strategy. The measurement of our success will be measured by the impact we have on the society. Generally, people will be happy if they see numbers that look beautiful, but numbers are numbers. But for us, it's about making the difference, and the difference can only be measured by the impact that we as an organizations have. This strategy, therefore, that we have that is intended to end in 2020, it's intended to have that impact. This impact is intended to create what we call a 21st century CCMA. Therefore, our drive, our thrust, and our resolve is to have a 21st century CCMA.
The CCMA must continue to improve, must research, must prepare to deal with the situation as and when it develops. But looking into what has been happening, we've seen the increase in terms of the cases referred to the CCMA. But CCMA, to a greater extent, respond to the attitude. For instance, if in the labor market, the stakeholders, labor and business in particular, and in the public sector, government, and its employees, improves and understand and relate to each other better, that becomes better to the CCMA. So we believe the CCMA getting into the future need to spend much of its time and energy enabling the parties to deal with each other to prevent dispute rather than waiting for the dispute to occur. Now, I think we need CCMA need to, in a very innovative way, come out with an effective strategy on dispute prevention than on dispute resolution.
The CCMA is an institution that most of us in the country are quite proud of. And I'm not talking about an institution that's just out there. I'm talking about the people. So the CCMA has got very good commissioners, has got good leadership. And over the past 20 years, the CCMA has been delivering on its mandate in a sterling way. It is something that the CCMA can build on as it looks forward to the next 20 years. My advice would be focus on maintaining and improving on the capacity that you have as a CCMA. You've got good people, good commissioners, you've got good people in the offices as well. And those are the resources that can take this organization forward.
We need to get into the workplaces. We need to effectively assist employers and employees to resolve the disputes at the cold face, which is on the production line, at basically the office, and say, but listen, what skills do you need to be able to resolve that? Also, we need as the CCMA to expand our services to say, instead of waiting for those disputes to come to us, is there a way that employers and employees can contact us and say, we potentially have the following problem arising, CCMA, please come and assist. And once again, my thinking would be a preventative type of approach. Teaching people skills, teaching people how to resolve issues, and for the CCMA to get in at an earlier stage.
The way the CCMA needs to prepare itself for the next decade or two is probably to look at what is happening, the successful models in some countries. Remember, we are coming from a very strong history in this country of adversarialism. CCMA can play a role but it can't play the role all the time. A very good example is the university fees must fall protest that was going on. What was the role of the CCMA there? Did the CCMA have a role there at all? Because at the end of the day, it's a dispute. It's a dispute, it's a kind of strike, it's a protest. The CCMA needs to work with other institutions broadly and to look at other models. Like in Sweden, for example, there's wonderful models of how collective bargaining works that can be implemented in this country. You can't only look at worker rights versus employer rights. Neither can you look at it the other way. It's all about education at the end of the day. And it has to start from, I think, from kindergarten. That's where this whole thing starts processing. And if you're looking at another 20 to 40 years, there'll be a new generation. And the new generation needs to take this thing forward.
Preparing for the next coming 20 years, the CCMA should in the first instance seek to increase its resources, engage with those in authority to understand the significant role that it plays, and therefore allocate more budget funding to the CCMA, focus on training, skills development, particularly for its own commissioners with the developing labor market, complicated relationship that developed. And again, remember that it's not only facing South Africa alone, it's a global issue. So the more we move into the economic development, technology, it's going to require that the CCMA should also look at that quite closely.
Going forward, the CCMA must really focus on continuing its efficiencies, its internal organizational efficiencies, because that's going to be very important. We need an efficient CCMA in order to deal with the challenge the markets place challenges coming forward.
In the words of CCMA Director, Mr. Cameron Murajani, the 20 years anniversary is about celebrating the role of the CCMA in its first 20 years and launching the next 20 years. It is a transition where the relay baton is handed to run the next 20 years. We wish the CCMA strength and vision as it continues its journey into the future.
CCMA is a national asset. We need to be proud of it. We need to take ownership of it. We need to use it effectively. But once again, we salute its own achievement and existence for this period. It has improved greatly. We want to see further improvement with time.
The CCMA as an institution is very often the only place where most people, especially the working people, would have their rights, their constitutional rights respected or restored. So people have rights. There is a constitutional right not to be unfairly dismissed, for example. And most people, when they come to the CCMA and they access the services for free, and they walk out of the CCMA having been heard and having been told that they matter, that they were right. That's good for their dignity, and it is something that I believe the CCMA has been doing very well and can continue to do very well. In other words, validating people's dignity.
Well, the CCMA has a massive task ahead of it. Currently, we've got a massive case volume. We need to instill in the social partners, in employees and employers, a mindset of saying, how do we work together? We have seen over the last 10 years or so that we're away from the euphoria of everybody working together, and it seems to become more pluralist, whereby each camp is trying to see what is the best they can gain. And I think that's sort of the bridge we need to build again, is to say, guys, we're all in this together. We need one another to make it a success. And I think that would need to be the role of the CCMA, rather than just dealing with the next conciliation or the next arbitration.
The CCMA is one of the most successful entities or organizations created in the post-apartheid period. And people rely on it to actually fix up a lot of problems. And that's where the problem lies, and that's where the problem really lies. It can't fix up everything. There are other structures in this country that needs to dovetail with the work that the CCMA does to make it a better place, a better society for everybody, where the Constitution is actually lived.
I think the CCMA should continue on the path that it set itself up right from the beginning, and continue to sharpen the skills of its commissioners, continue to get involved early on in dispute resolution, get to train its commissioners to understand the labor market economics, and not only South African but globally, because that's the challenge that we face as things changes in Great Britain, things changes politically in America, things changes in the neighborhood, in the region. CCMA would have to continue to sharpen its services in as far as that is concerned.
So in South Africa and globally, we're going into a period of economic uncertainty. And that will demand from the CCMA, which is already a trusted and a credible organization, to reposition itself to resolve the spillovers of some of the economic uncertainties. And one way in a South African context for us as South Africans broadly to deal with economic uncertainty, with potential low growth and with potential job losses is for all stakeholders in the marketplace to partner. What South Africa needs more and more to deal with the uncertainty is social pacts between business, organized labor, government and communities. And I think the CCMA, potentially a role for the CCMA going forward, is to be the catalyst for that partnership, because the CCMA as a credible and as a trusted organization can actually bring disputing social partners together.
As the CCMA, we exist in a world of other entities that are assisting in the achievement of the statutory mandate. In particular, as an example, Productivity SA is another institution which exists that we work with in partnerships to ensure that we achieve the overall mandate of our legislation. And to them and other entities, we are grateful.